Good morning, YouTube. This is LA Prepper here with another video for you. We're not going to try. I'm going to keep this video short. One of my wonderful subscribers mentioned recently that not everyone has time for a 47-minute video, which is very true. That was on my 11 things about the economy video. But quick sort of anonymous shout out to my recent subscribers. Maybe I'll just kind of use your initials here: JBD, DOET, IF, or maybe ISF, PB, TE, and JR. Thanks for your subscriptions. It definitely I appreciate it. I do appreciate it. You know, the whole purpose of me making these videos is to share my thoughts with other people. So it's nice to know that, at least to a certain extent, that y'all are finding the content that I'm putting out there valuable, or at least, interesting enough to tickle your brain. One person said, gave me food for thought or something to think about, or something like that. So definitely trying to open up your mind. It's kind of the person that I am. I don't really try to change people too much, but if I see that there's a way that a person can grow, I might try to talk with them. So without further ado, what are we going to talk about today? Today we're going to talk about car maintenance. All right, so it's 9:30, 9:32. Just saw my neighbors working on their car, and I've been thinking about doing a car maintenance video because I personally have had some car maintenance joys. I also have a very modest amount of auto repair skill myself. So maybe just real quick, I'll talk about why you would want to learn how to work on your car. Probably pretty obvious reasons, saving money being the one, but it's not just about saving money. It's about keeping the vehicle in the best state of repair possible. It's like the difference between going to a doctor once a year and having the doctor tell you you should exercise more and eat right, versus you telling yourself every day, hey, I should exercise more and eat right. So, there's nothing wrong with having enough money to just go to the mechanic every time you want to. But even people that feel like they can afford going to the mechanic as much as they need to are probably going to put off things until maybe a check engine light comes on or their car starts running really rough. They might not always be in the preventative mindset. And if you can't do stuff yourself, or you choose not to work on your car yourself even a little bit, you're going to miss things that could potentially cause you more expensive repairs. The modern cars are very amazing pieces of machinery, and even though they do like to be that, the engines prefer to run with everything running perfectly, they will actually run, and sometimes not even popping a code, a check engine light code. They'll run imperfectly. Your car will run with bad plugs, and it's not going to tell you that it has bad plugs necessarily, unless you get a misfire. If your catalytic converter starts getting clogged, your car will still run, but you might not know it. Even things like if your air is down in your tires, you're going to get less gas mileage, but it's not something that your car, unless you have, tire sensors, tire pressure sensors, which some new cars have, it's not really going to tell you that. So at least I think at a minimum level, it's important to just kind of be aware of things, from tire pressures to keeping your fluid levels good to, checking the plugs, inspecting really basic sensors, hoses. And I'm going to get into what I've been going through with my car, give you a little bit more specific examples. So not that you're asking, but just for reference, I drive a 2003 Lexus RX 300. It is a V6. It is a transverse V6, which means that the engine, the crankshaft is rotating 90 degrees to the the direction of the vehicle. Pretty common on front wheel drive cars, very common on Japanese cars. My car is actually an all wheel drive, but nevertheless, they still went with the transverse mounting because they were sort of borrowing some transmission parts from the Camry, which has the same engine and part of the same transmission components. So my car has 220,000 miles. I didn't put them all on myself. I bought it with, I want to say 150. So I guess I put 70,000 miles on it in the last, I don't know, eight years or so. Recently, it has been giving me a few different issues, which have been pretty frustrating. It's been running rough. It's been popping oxygen sensor codes. The check engine light obviously has been on. And kind of more recently, it'd been giving me random misfire codes and running running lean. I wasn't getting enough fuel in one of the banks. When you have a V6, you have the cylinders 1, 3, and 5 on one side, 2, 4, and 6 on the other. So one of my banks wasn't getting enough fuel, and the biggest frustration. Actually, real quick, I'll talk about how I got the codes. I have a real old-fashioned sensor that you plug into the car, and you plug it into your computer, and you actually run software, and it pulls the codes. These days, for 20 or 30 bucks from Amazon, eBay, or your local store, your local auto parts store, you can get a sensor, a cheap little OBD2 scanner that will read the codes in your car. Highly recommend it. You can get shops to do it for free, but back to that whole, visit your doctor once a year versus do your checkup, do a daily checkup on yourself. It's just really nice to have that reader, and especially if you're trying to diagnose things. If you're trying to find out if a code is intermittent or if it's actually you really have a sensor problem, being able to reset the code and then read it quickly is really convenient. Now, you can reset the codes by disconnecting the battery, but as far as reading the codes, and even you can read the codes typically by like jumping a couple terminals and counting how many times the light flashes and all this stuff. But having a code reader, honestly, if you have a vehicle that has an OBD2 sensor, if your vehicle's not brand new, if you have over 50,000 miles on your vehicle or over 100,000, or even just in general, get a code reader. They're such amazing little things. Not only can you read the whether or not the check engine codes, you can actually read data from the sensors. So you can look at your oxygen sensor or your temperature sensor, or your pressure sensor, and all variety of things, and see what readings does it give me when I'm idling, when the engine's cold, when the engine's hot, when I'm at 2,000 RPM. What is its reading compared to the other bank? I was able to compare my oxygen reading from one bank to the other bank, and I could see that the percentages, were consistently off. So it's not just that the sensor's bad, but the data that the sensor is sending is indicative of a problem with the engine. In fact, I think the sensor was mostly good, but because it wasn't getting enough fuel, it was trying to tell the engine dump all this fuel in, but I had kind of some other issues going on. So I can keep this video short. Let me talk real quick about a couple of things I checked on my car. These are vacuum connections. They're rubber. At least they were rubber at one point. I don't know if you could call them rubber now, but they are super old and cracked, and the camera's not really going to do it justice, but these cracks are basically going from the outside all the way through to the middle. So, I don't know if this thing still is holding a vacuum or not, but it's just so cracked and so old. I'll show you right here. But like when I try to open it up, actually it doesn't look too bad. I guess it has like a reinforced sort of layer on the inside, but all the external stuff is just all cracked and awful. So shame on me for not replacing that sooner. That's something I should have done. Here's another one that was in a little better shape, but at the end, I pulled it off and it looked like this, and I'm like, Jesus, this is terrible. So I potentially could have had vacuum issues with my car, and the worst thing about vacuum issues is that they will cause your car to have a myriad of other problems, from running rough, idling rough, low power, hesitation, misfires, just so many problems that it can be really hard to hone in on exactly what's going on. This little bastard, this is a PCV, which is a positive crankcase valve, and it helps regulate the pressure in the crankcase and feeds into, I want to say, the intake as well. Now they say this is why sometimes it just pays to go buy a new $9 part. The way that you test this is either with a tube, blowing and sucking through it and see if it's still getting a good seal. But a lot of people online just say, shake it. Okay, well, I can shake this and it still makes a noise, but the thing is a piece of garbage. It was super old. It's at least 60,000 miles old. I've never changed it. Um, my car has probably been running rough for the last 10,000 miles because of this piece of garbage. Because I haven't taken it to a mechanic. I've looked at the plugs, the filters, the values. I thought it was the damn oxygen sensor, and that's why, it pays sometimes to either take it to a mechanic or to spend a little bit more energy into diagnosing what the problem was. It turned out to be this part. I tested it. I talked with a mechanic for a half an hour on the phone. And, he was really cool to talk to me for that long, but he gave me a whole bunch of things to check out. And ultimately, my engine's running a lot better now. It's still sort of having some issues, but this was I was sucking in some oil, some nasty crankcase air into my intake, and it was fouling my sensors, it was fouling my plugs. So this $10 part, my plugs are practically $8 each themselves. So this part is as expensive as a plug, and spark plug, the iridium ones anyways. And it was just causing all sorts of issues. So when I finally started getting a little bit more serious about it, putting more time into it, I found out the issue, and now I'm not going to be ruining, $40, $80 sensors. By the way, if you replace your oxygen sensors, you probably want to replace both at the same time, because the new generation ones and the old generation ones don't send data in the same way. Real quick, I'm going to show you this mass airflow sensor, because another nice thing about just having some really basic diagnosis skills is that you can check these sensors by taking some resistance readings on the two different loops. One of the loops, this sensor has basically two different things that it's looking at. One is the pressure, what the pressure is. The more vacuum you have, the lower the pressure is going to be. So that can help tell you the airflow. And then it also has this other little resistor in here between two poles. So what you can do is measure the resistance with a multimeter between the ones on this side and the ones on this side, and then compare them to what they're supposed to be. I've sort of only found, hearsay on what the value should be from other professional mechanics. I haven't officially found things from Toyota or from the manufacturer, this one being a no-name manufacturer. But, this is a $20 part, and it tells the computer how much air is coming into the engine. So even if this part is mostly working, back to what I was saying about how vehicles can work when they're not perfect, but they might not tell you that they're not perfect. My car has never popped a mass air fuel code, but when I was looking at the values of the one that's in the car, the old one right now, they were way out of line with what this other person was saying. So, do I want to be a cheapskate and not buy it and just say, well, I hope that sensor is good and I don't have enough information to really tell, whether or not it's bad? Or do I just spend $20 and consider that part is 60,000 miles old, So in conclusion, keep this to like a 13-minute video. If you don't know how to work on your car, that's all right. You don't have to, change your oil tomorrow. It's not going to be the end of the world, so to speak. But I would definitely recommend at least, for the time and energy that you spend prepping, that you spend with your community, that you spend learning new skills, put auto mechanics or auto repair onto your repertoire, and just spend 20-30 minutes a week. Watch a video about how to diagnose a vacuum leak, or how to check your PCV valve or PCVV valve. Yeah, I think just PCV valve. But just different little things. How to change your plugs, how to check a mass airflow sensor. What does this code mean? How to read a code from your car with an OBD2 scanner. Maybe you can tell Santa that you want a car scanner for Christmas. But at any rate, I hope you enjoyed the video sharing a little bit of my experience about some car maintenance. Definitely a skill that I would recommend working on. Until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the future.